In Tom O'Brien's first public comments since quarterback Russell Wilson announced he was going to spend the spring playing minor league baseball, O'Brien says he believes Wilson's college football days are over.
Our plans are he's not coming back. He'll be a baseball player. We have to move forward with Glennon. We've planned for this day. I can't sit here and say, okay, we're going to wait for Russell to come back. We have to move forward, and we're going to move forward. Michael's going to be the quarterback. That's how we're going.
If Wilson does choose to return to the football team,
the door's always open, but I don't foresee that happening down the road one way or another. Russell's never failed at anything he's attempted. He's going to go try to make the Colorado Rockies, so.
I'm glad you're doing this podcast because I always thought, I don't know if it's quite worthy of a 30 for 30, but it's worthy of mini-series or segment. There's a lot to it.
99.9 The Fan's Joe Giglio and Joe Ovius set the record straight in Never Failed, the Russell Wilson Story podcast.
Brought to you by Copiers Plus. If you don't know how much printing expenses are costing your business, you're probably spending too much. Gain clarity with a free assessment from Copiers Plus. Book yours today at copiers-plus.com.
There's an iconic picture of Bo Jackson in his football shoulder pads with a wooden baseball bat resting behind his neck. Richard Noble took that picture and Nike turned it into a poster. They put 3 generic words on it: the ball player. The poster was popular in 1989, but in 2007, Russell Wilson might have been the only person at NC State who had it on his wall in his dorm room. Jackson was a sublime talent, otherworldly, really. He had won the Heisman Trophy at Auburn and then shocked everyone by going to play minor league baseball. But he came back to football, and he ran over Brian Bosworth in truly an iconic moment in Monday Night Football's history in 1987. 2 years later, he was the MVP of the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. When Wilson got to NC State, he played quarterback and second base. The goal was to play both professionally, just as Jackson had. And the goal was to be iconic, just as Jackson was. Part of it was Wilson had the talent to excel in each sport. Part of it was he had a will and determination to prove people wrong. And part of it was the legacy of his father. When Russell Wilson got to NC State in the summer of 2007, he got paired up with Wayne Crawford, a defensive lineman from Philadelphia. The two roomed together at the old University Towers that summer. Like most freshman roommates, Crawford and Wilson had never met before they started living together. And Crawford, he had no idea who this unheralded recruit out of Richmond was. As Crawford tells the story, there was something unique about Wilson's energy and his ability to connect to his new teammates. And Crawford figured that out literally the first day that he met Wilson.
First day I met Russ, we moved in together, and I'll never forget this. But there were a couple guys down the hall. One was Stephen Howard. I think it was Justin Byers, maybe like J5, Jarvis Williams, and somebody else. But it's like the first day we all meet, and he's like, "Hey guys, Russ is a super bubbly guy. He's like, he's always like, he kind of gives you a little bit of energy, and sometimes you're caught off guard by it. So he's like, "Hey guys, you want to go out to the practice field and throw some balls?" And in my mind, I'm like, "No, I don't want to go throw balls. I'm a defensive lineman." I said, "How about this? You give me a 5-second count. I'll line up on probably a 3 technique, a 5 or a 7, and I'll come after you." And he's like, "Okay." So we go out there, a couple receivers, and he is throwing darts. I'm really giving him a 5-second count. And we couldn't get on the practice field because the practice field were closed. So we were in the parking lot outside the practice field, which were gravel grass. And these guys are still running out routes, digs, cuts. And he's putting everything on the money. So I knew then he was like, this dude's kind of special, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, at that point, I knew that there was something about him that I had never met before in terms of the ball was coming off his hands like it was a bullet. There was no arc to the ball. I hadn't really seen quarterbacks. I just got out of high school, and there was good quarterbacks coming out of Philly, but there wasn't anybody like him. He's a smaller guy, so he always had a chip on his shoulder, and then his focus was nuts. I feel like he had the playbook memorized in the first 5 days because he would sit down. I'm going out to the study hall, I'm going out to lunch or something. He'd be sitting in his room just looking at stuff visualizing things. And I was like, dude, you can look at that playbook and visualize what you got to do and all your receivers and your blocking techniques. He's like, yeah, I think I got it. It's like, it's kind of simple. I was like, yeah, that's not me, buddy.
What were your conversations with him about baseball? Like, did he tell you, like, hey, I want to be a Major League Baseball player and an NFL player?
Yeah, he's like, I want to be Bo Jackson. Yeah, that's what we always talked about. We talked about Bo Jackson, and I was like, yeah, dude. And if anybody could do it, I knew it was him just because I knew it was special, one way or the other. So he was always like, yeah, I could see myself being like Bo Jackson.
That was always the pattern with Wilson. People would look at his height and think, nah, he can't play quarterback. But once they saw him throw, they knew he had something. Wilson, though, still had some work to do to impress new football coach Tom O'Brien and his offensive coordinator Dana Bible. NC State went 3-9 in 2006, which turned out to be Amato's final year. They lost the last 7 games of that season. You knew O'Brien, coming off of a 10-3 season at Boston College, was going to hit the reset button and then some with the returning players at NC State. The quarterback situation was less than ideal. Daniel Evans was a local kid from Broughton. His dad had played at NC State, and he played well enough in spurts in 2006, but he was not a long-term solution. Harrison Beck was a transfer that Amato had added from Nebraska. This was back when Nebraska was trying to become a passing team, and he had sat out the 2006 season under NCAA rules. And Justin Burke was there too. Burke was another one of these long line of would-be successors to Phillip Rivers that Amato was always chasing on the recruiting trail, one of the highly rated players. And then there was Wilson, the undersized, unheralded recruit. Evans ended up winning the job, and Wilson ended up redshirting, even though there were some coaches and teammates who would tell you later that Wilson was actually the best quarterback in practice. Let's just say the season got off to a less than auspicious start.
The Tom O'Brien era begins at NC State, and it's a shaky beginning. First play from scrimmage, Central Florida's Kevin Smith from his own 20, and he's gone. 80 yards, just like that, 7-0 Central Florida. The Knights totally dominate the first half. State has one last chance. Beck's pass intercepted. The Pack claws back but falls 25-23.
We have nobody to blame but ourselves. We lost as a football team. We lost as coaches. We lost as players. Didn't do what I had to do to win the football game. Are we disappointed? Yeah, certainly we are, but I'm certainly not discouraged.
Tom Suter, TV5 Sports Raleigh.
Beck started the next week, which was O'Brien's return game with Boston College. Beck threw 5 interceptions and had a fumble in the 37-17 loss. Quite frankly, it's a miracle that O'Brien ever put Beck back on the field. Long story short, O'Brien eventually went back to Evans, and after a terrible 1-5 start to the season, State won 4 straight games before losing the final 2.
The joy pours through the Pack after the most emotional of their 4 straight wins. And Daniel Evans becomes the first State quarterback not named Phillip Rivers to beat Carolina in 15 years.
For me, it's relief. I think everybody else was excited. I know I'd have been the GOAT if we'd have lost that game.
Talked about earlier, learning how to win. Well, this team's found out a little bit how to win.
And at 5-5, one more win makes State bowl eligible. Who would have thought that? Jason Jennings, WRAL Sports, Raleigh.
All in all, a 5-7 season. Not great, but certainly not as bad as it looked when it started.
One season in to rebuilding NC State's football team, Tom O'Brien, a coach prone to point out things his team can do better, says the glass is no longer half empty in West Raleigh.
The difference that we have here is we come in, I said this before too, with a resume. We've done it before. All I have to do is look at the championship game in Jacksonville.
Next year's team will be young. O'Brien estimates as many as 55 of the Pack's players next season will be freshmen or sophomores.
Sometimes it's tough to teach old dogs new tricks. Well, when you get puppies, hopefully you train them right.
So look for a talented group of Wolf puppies next season. Ken Medlin, WRAL Sports, Raleigh.
In his freshman year in baseball, Wilson was able to play right away. He played 32 games out of the 64 the Wolfpack played that season. He started in 16. He hit .296 with a pair of home runs and 6 steals. Not bad. Wilson missed out on fall practice during the football season, and he had to play catch-up. Baseball's not exactly a sport where you can make up for lost time. Wolfpack baseball coach Elliot Avent did his best to give Wilson a chance to contribute in any way that he could that first year.
My thought was to get Russell on the field as much as I could and wherever I could get him on the field. The repetitions that it takes to get on the field as an infielder in college baseball at this level are tremendous. Russell didn't have the opportunity to come out and take enough ground balls, turn double plays, and those kind of things. But he played second base, but I got him on the field as much as we put him in the outfield as well. I just want him in the lineup. If you could put your best players, who are your best people, also in the same game, you up your chances of winning that game more than just the talent that's on the field. And so my objective always was to figure out where I could get Russell on the field. So he mostly played second, but he got in the outfield as well. And but he could have played short at NC State. He just didn't have the repetitions.
Just because you can't make up for lost time in baseball doesn't mean that Russell Wilson didn't try. Kyle Wilson, who was Russell Wilson's friend and teammate on the baseball team and is actually now the hitting coach for the Durham Bulls, explains how Russ pushed to catch up with his baseball teammates and how the football guy was viewed by the baseball team.
He was coming in, obviously not having hardly any at-bats or really no at-bats during the fall, and his drive to kind of make up for lost time. Football took obviously a lot of his time, but his drive to get better every day. Obviously he went through his struggles early on, but what's crazy about him, man, is that, obviously he was going to football workouts at 4 or 5 a.m., going to class, and then going to baseball practice. You talk about having a super, super long day. He had all of that, and he still showed up and wanted to compete and get better and try to make up for lost time because he spent so much time on the football field.
Did you ever interpret as a baseball person like, man, what's this football guy doing here? He's taking up our time, or he's just trying to hog the spotlight. Did you have a sense that he knew how to ingratiate himself to his baseball teammates?
Yeah, it didn't. When he was on the baseball field, you never really thought of him as a football player. I mean, it was all baseball. And I think if you talk with Russ, even to this day, and I spent a lot of time with him, I was like, dude, what is it, man? Like, do you like football better? You like baseball better? Well, you're gonna start concentrating on something. And this is even going into when he was playing professional baseball, asking him these questions. And he's like, you know what, Kyle? Like, when it's baseball season, I am 100% into baseball. When it's football, I'm 100% into football. So I think he didn't come in with an ego. He didn't come in with any ulterior motive. When he was on the baseball field with us, he was a great teammate. He pushed us all. He probably pushed us more so in just the mental toughness and the work ethic that he possessed. Obviously he was a little bit behind from the baseball standpoint just because he hadn't had the reps. But yeah, man, he joined the team well and was never. I didn't ever think that there was ever an ulterior motive or big league us at all.
A major part of Wilson's success has been his family. He comes from a long line of lawyers, educators, and athletes. His grandfather, Harrison Jr., served as the president of Norfolk State University for 20 years. His grandmother, Lucy Wilson, was a professor at Old Dominion. His uncle Ben graduated from Harvard Law and worked in Washington as a lawyer. His dad, Harrison III, played football and baseball at Dartmouth. He had a training camp tryout with the San Diego Chargers before he went to law school at Virginia, which is where he met his wife Tammy, and then he had a successful law career in Richmond. His brother, Harrison IV, played both baseball and football at the University of Richmond, and his sister, Anna, just in March, helped Stanford win the National Basketball Championship. There's a strong family pull there, and it's rooted in faith and education. Wilson's relationship with his father, though, was special.
Bo Jackson played football and baseball. Deion Sanders played football and baseball. Brian Jordan eventually gave up football. Who was your idol growing up? Who did you emulate?
I don't really idolize anybody but God, but probably my favorite player of all was my dad. even though he didn't, isn't a Hall of Fame football or baseball player, he really taught me how to play the game and taught me how to be mentally tough and try to do the right thing every time I step on the field, and every time you're on and off the field. So that's probably the person I would have to honestly say in my heart. And it's always nice watching, guys like Deion Sanders change the game with his speed and everything that he could do, and, all those type of big-time players. But I definitely have to say my dad for sure.
On top of all of Wilson's commitments at NC State, he had another. He would make frequent trips back to Richmond to check in on his dad, who had been suffering from complications from diabetes. His dad had to have his leg amputated, and he was gravely ill during Wilson's time at NC State. Harrison Wilson III was only 55 when he passed away on June 9th, 2010. It was the day after Wilson was drafted by the Colorado Rockies.
With the Colorado Rockies, I was drafted on June 8th, 2010, and then, I was on cloud nine, I felt like, for a little bit, and then, 24 hours later, my dad passed away. So it was kind of, that you really realize and, how grateful you are and everything, within that short period of time. So when this draft came around, I knew how much of a blessing it was to have the opportunity to be drafted. And sure enough, the Seahawks, and I think my dad was knocking on the door, Pete Carroll and John Schneider, the GM, just telling him, hey, you gotta get this kid. So for them to call my name, it was a great experience, and so much emotion going on. And I know that my dad was right there watching with me.
As Russell starts having success, I realize his dad's never seen him play. Mm-hmm. And so I called his mom. So I said, we need to get Mr. Wilson to the game. And she said it's hard because they won't let him, wherever he was getting the treatments and the rehab with his, they don't want him there around a lot of people.
Okay.
Around a lot of people.
I don't want him to get sick.
And I think my memory is we were playing Wake Forest. I said, we got to you talk to them, and I'll have him in an isolated place. Mm-hmm. There will be nobody around him but his family, I promise you. And he has got to see his son play. And so they work it out, and he comes to this game. And so I talked to football, and I got this little cubby hole in the Murphy Center outside one of the offices for just his family. And then, of course, I realized with compliance, maybe that's some kind of violation because you're doing an extra benefit. So I can't remember exactly what I said to compliance, but I think I said, well, you got like 4 or 5 days to work this out because I've already set it up and he's coming. And so they worked it out. It was okay. Russell's dad comes to the game. It's a little bit of a cold game.
Yeah, November 15th would have been the date.
Okay.
In 08.
And it's the first drive. I'll never forget it. And I say to Mr. Wilson, I say, hey, listen, Russell's so excited you're here. You know what I'm saying? And he's been great all year. But don't expect him to have a good game, or don't at least expect him to start off good because he's so pumped up you're here. 15-yard out, completion, 30 yards down the middle, completion, scrambles for 12 yards. As I'm telling Mr. Wilson, don't expect much, he's slowly driving the team down the field. Next thing you know, we're in the end zone, fight song cranks up, and I look down and Mr. Wilson's just basically dancing to the beat of the fight song, big smile on his face, and I thought, this is a good time to exit. And I just said, hey, y'all enjoy the game, and I left. Russell has a big-time game. Then after the game, fourth quarter, I go to get the family. We go outside, and now it's really cold. And I remember Russell, I remember this like it was yesterday. Russell comes out like a coat and tie on. And he's sitting there with a line of, 50 people signing autograph after autograph. And his dad's sitting there in a wheelchair with a blanket over his legs, and it's cold. Mm-hmm. I'm cold, his dad's cold. And Russell's just signing every autograph. As much as he loves his dad, he understands his responsibility that you sign every kid's autograph. And he signed. Finally, I went over there. I said, Russell, I know you want to finish this line, but your dad's freezing. We got to go. And it took that to get Russell away from what he felt like was his obligation. He was just that committed, that dedicated, that devoted. He's the most unique. And I've seen a lot of great ones. I don't want to say he's in a class by himself. I don't mean that. Mm-hmm. But there's never been a more unique college athlete that I've ever seen.
Don't drift.
Russell Wilson didn't come to NC State to play quarterback for the scout team. But he had to serve in that role last year and firmly believes the experience made him better.
I actually enjoyed it. At first it was kind of tough, And I'm a competitor. I'm a big competitor, and I was hoping maybe I could get a starting job coming in, but I didn't. So I had to deal with it.
Wilson has dealt with it well because the redshirt freshman is now an early favorite for the starting job. It's a competition that won't be complete until Daniel Evans' shoulder heals and Mike Glennon comes to campus in the fall.
It's a now thing for me, and it's a now thing for the rest of the guys. We're not really worried about what's going to happen in the future.
Now he's making the most of the spring. Of the 3 healthy quarterbacks, Wilson has put up the best passing numbers in the scrimmages. He can run too, but
I like to drop back and throw the ball. I love to throw the ball. In high school, I threw the ball 45 times a game.
And threw 74 touchdowns and nearly 7,500 yards in his 2 years as a high school starting quarterback. He also plays for State's baseball team. But Tom O'Brien has made one thing clear.
He's a football player first.
Okay. So he'll be there Saturday, right?
He'll be there Saturday. I don't know where the baseball team is, but he'll be out there on Saturday.
When Wolfpack fans can finally see Wilson in the spring game. Jason Jennings, WRAL Sports, Raleigh.
After redshirting his first year, Wilson's football career would take off in 2008. He was the first freshman quarterback to be named first-team All-ACC, and he was also the Conference Rookie of the Year. But after a standout scrimmage by hotshot freshman Mike Glennon and an injury in the secondary, it was almost over before it started for Russell Wilson. I'll let Mike Glennon tell you what happened.
There was 5 of us, so there's one everyone. So Daniel Evans was a senior, Harrison Beck was a junior, Justin Burke was he was the sophomore, Russell was going to be a redshirt freshman, and then I was a true freshman. And it was really like I don't know if it was a 5-man race, but it was.
You thought you had a chance.
I thought I had a chance, and it was a chance. It wasn't like I just thought it. Clearly from the get-go, to me, it was like it was either going to be Daniel Evans, Russell, or me. And I thought it was going to be either Russell or me, honestly. And we kind of go through camp, and I was impressed with Russell. Like, from the moment I saw him throw the ball, I'm like, this guy looks like the real deal. And there was kind of mumblings of the year before when he was redshirting, like, this kid can play, but I was already, committed, and I wasn't going to change because of that. And so I kind of knew, this guy was probably going to be pretty good. So we go through camp, and I still remember the very first scrimmage. I think it was either Russell or Daniel probably started, but they gave me like a couple series with the ones, and I did really well. I think I threw like 2 touchdowns, and I felt like I belong. And I don't know if it was that night or like the next day, but O'Brien called me up to his office and kind of like hinted like, you need to get ready to go. Like, if you play like what we just saw, you probably aren't going to be here for 5 years anyway. I think the second scrimmage went okay. Me and Russell kind of went back and forth, but I think they were still kind of leaning towards me. So the third scrimmage, they had me start, and I wasn't ready. Like, the speed of the game, just it felt too much. I mean, I'd only been on campus for a little over a month. Like, I wasn't ready, and I kind of got exposed that third scrimmage, and Russell played well. So I think at that point they were like, okay, let's go with Russell. And just something interesting on that is Russell didn't tell me this until a few years later, but I guess after that, one of those scrimmages, the first or second one, they told him, we're thinking, because in one of the scrimmages, I don't know if you remember the guy's name. His name was Clem Johnson, safety, broke his jaw. And Russell said that when that happened, they said, we're thinking about moving you to safety. And Russell said, I'm a team player. I'll do what's best for the team. Just give me one more shot. And that's when I had the scrimmage that showed I wasn't ready. So it's just like, talk about looking back of what could have happened. Who knows if he ever even plays quarterback at college and goes on. But he was definitely the right man for the job. Like, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready yet, so.
Wilson did not take too kindly to the suggestion of moving to defense. He had come to NC State to play quarterback and to play baseball. He was going to do everything he had set out to do. We subsequently know this was an important conversation because it was referenced by Wilson in the infamous Wisconsin graduation speech in 2016.
I'm doing everything. I mean, I'm catching punts, catching routes. I'm getting hit. I mean, I know I can play quarterback. I just need the chance. About 2 weeks before our first game, my coach calls me into his office and tells me I'm not getting that chance. Excuse my country voice here, but he says, son, I'm switching your position. I'm moving you to safety. He's not asking me, he's telling me. I could have just gone along with it. Maybe I should have just gone along with it. But for whatever reason, I wasn't ready to take no for an answer. I prayed about it. I talked to my mom. I talked to my brother. I would have talked to my dad, but he was on his deathbed at the time. And after a few days, I just came to this peace. So the question I asked when life told me no was, what am I capable of? Am I capable of doing what I want to do? I had really had to think about it. And when it came to playing quarterback, the answer was yes.
This story comes up, and it sows the seeds of how Wilson didn't trust Tom O'Brien.
I remember seeing him get off the elevator in our facility, and he's like, "Hey, man, they're trying to make me a safety. I think he just had a meeting with like Coach Bible and O'Brien." And I was like, "What?" And then he's like, "I'm not going to do it." I was like, "Yeah, I don't think you're a safety, dude. I mean, you got a cannon. Excuse my French." Long story short, he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna just pray about it." So a couple days later, he's got a safety. I think he kind of refused to do that. I'm not sure how that conversation went, but I know they wanted to do that when Mike came in because he's this tall. Mike's a tall kind of pocket guy, can see over the line really easy, and they came from the land of Matt Hasselbeck, Matt Ryan. So that's the type of guys that they were used to. When they tried to make him a safety, the relationship was strained to the point where he's questioning what they want him to do. And that was very clear. Did that have a negative effect on the relationship? I'm sure.
Russell Wilson went into the 2008 football season as the starting quarterback. State opened at South Carolina. This was the Steve Spurrier era for the Gamecocks. This was the heart of it. South Carolina was really good, especially on defense. They knocked Wilson out of the game in the second quarter with a concussion, and State ended up losing 34-0. Wilson missed the next game but returned for a loss at Clemson and then a home win over ECU, a top 25 ECU team, which was actually an upset for the Wolfpack. Wilson suffered another injury, though, missed another game, but was back in the lineup for the next 3 ACC games, all losses, and including a reunion with Chuck Amato, who at that point had gone back to work for Bobby Bowden at Florida State. Much like the 2007 season, State was off to a slow start. Didn't look good. They were 2-6 with Duke, Wake Forest, and North Carolina up next. Wilson was able to lead them to wins in all 3 in-state games, including a 41-10 rout of the Tar Heels. Now at 5-6, State closes out the season at home with a win over Miami to become bowl eligible. Wilson earns first-team All-ACC honors. He's the first freshman quarterback in ACC history to do that. He threw for 17 touchdowns with only 1 interception. At 6-6, NC State winds up in the Papa John's Bowl in Birmingham, Alabama, against Rutgers, then in the old Big East.
Wilson's selection as a first-team all-conference quarterback has not changed his stance on continuing to play football and baseball at NC State.
I haven't really talked to Coach about it that much yet. I'm just excited, for the bowl game. That's really all I'm looking forward to, and just practicing hard and practicing with my teammates again.
Russell Wilson has his dream intact.
I've always wanted to play pro football. I've always wanted to play pro baseball. I would love to do that. I would love to play both if I could, and I think I have the ability to. I know a lot of it's you got to have a lot of time. You got to be organized, and I think I'm that type of individual. But we'll see what happens down in the future.
State was up 17-6 at the half on Greg Schiano's team, but Wilson hurt his knee at the end of the first half and then didn't play in the second half. So remember, for the whole season, Russell Wilson threw 1 interception. In the second half of the Papa John's Bowl, Daniel Evans and Harrison Beck combined to throw for 3 interceptions. Guess what happened? NC State lost 29-23. There was a moment after the game, though, that stood out to defensive coordinator Mike Archer.
So we were ahead at the half, and after the game's over, we're stalling for time because our plane's delayed. And Russell is in a knee brace, and he comes over on crutches to me, and he says, "Coach, I apologize for getting hurt." And I went, "What?" He goes, "I apologize." He said they would not have stopped us on offense if I could have played. I go, "I agree with that, but we can't take a chance, Russell." But that showed me something about the kid. I mean, that he wanted to go back in there, but the doctors made a decision, which was the correct decision. You don't jeopardize some kid's future.
The knee injury from the Pizza Bowl game, that carried over into the 2009 baseball season for Wilson. He wore this clunky brace and was never really able to get into a groove. All of his hitting numbers were down from his first season, and he finished that year with just a .236 batting average. The tone for the 2009 football season was set when linebacker Nate Irving got into a serious car accident the day before the players were supposed to report for camp. Irving would end up missing the whole season. There was a whole host of other injuries that year, too. In spite of that, State started the season 3-1, but lost 6 of its first 7 conference games before just a masterpiece performance by Wilson in the season finale, a 28-27 home win over North Carolina. History will note that was the last time North Carolina would have all of its stars together for an ACC game. They had Robert Quinn, Marvin Austin, Greg Little, Bruce Carter. It was Butch Davis's best team. UNC actually led 17-7, but Wilson was just nearly perfect. 4 touchdown passes, he led a comeback. NC State wins 28-27. With no bowl game, Wilson actually got a head start on his junior baseball season, his draft-eligible year. The extra prep time showed. Wilson hit .306 in 47 games with 3 home runs and 9 steals. The Colorado Rockies, who had a fetish for college football quarterbacks, took Wilson in the 4th round of the Major League Baseball draft in June. Wilson's dad would pass away that same month, but as Wayne Crawford, Wilson's old roommate and friend, noted, Wilson was able to turn even that tragedy into a positive.
He was really close with his parents, his mom especially. And he was really close with his dad too. And then one of the bigger issues with him was, his dad didn't make it all the way through his college experience, and that was a big issue that hurt a lot for him. But he kind of channeled that into his focusing, in my mind.
How much of his pursuit of baseball and football do you think was almost like a promise to his dad?
Oh yeah, I think that was probably like 90%. I think his dad really instilled the fact that Russ had the talent in him to do whatever he wanted to do, whether it be baseball, football, or badminton. And he was like, I'm going to go after it, almost because my father told me so. And he went after it. And he got it. And the people's doubt, everybody's doubt, just fueled him more. He definitely had a chip. He never let go. I've never seen that chip come off. Even like looking at interviews now, he's a little bit more like cool guy Hollywood, but he's still got a chip on his shoulder because he knows people doubt him, and that's always been there.
Giglio, you and I have been doing this long enough where we recognize Tobacco Road football requires things to align for each individual team to have a chance at an ACC title. Happened for Wake Forest. Florida State was down. Clemson was down. Jim Grobe had put together a redshirt team and built up to get to this moment. They did it. Duke, under David Cutcliffe, again, took advantage of coastal chaos, got to an ACC championship game where they ran into a superior Florida State team, but they showed some fight in that game. Even Larry Fedora, with the culmination of Butch Davis recruits, his own high-flying offense, took advantage of coastal chaos. They ran into a superior Clemson team, but even they had a fight in that game. NC State has had those chances. Unfortunately, they've never actually knocked down the door to do so. And the most recent example was 2010 with Russell Wilson.
2010 was NC State's chance. The sun was shining. The door was open. All they had to do, Joe, was walk through. They start the year 4-0, and I remember this because this was Debbie Yau's first year as NC State's AD. And we had a meeting. She met with pretty much everybody at the News and Observer, and we were talking about how NC State was about to promote Russell Wilson for the Heisman Trophy. They had a big Thursday night win over Cincinnati at home. Then they went to Georgia Tech, and Russell Wilson had 368 passing yards in this win over Georgia Tech. If it's hard to remember now, Georgia Tech was actually the ACC champions in 2009.
Wait, did that happen?
Well, it did.
No, I was told it didn't
There's
happen.
no asterisk. It
told
did.
it didn't happen.
So they had this huge win at Georgia Tech. They're 4-0, and they're feeling good.
But I guess NC State stuff started to kick in. I mean, you lose at East Carolina. You go to a Clemson team that had not yet turned the corner to the Clemson program we see today under Dabo.
Yeah, there's always a but with NC State.
Oh, yeah.
It actually started at home against Virginia Tech, who eventually would win the ACC that year. They're up 14-0 in that game, and they have a defensive touchdown that they give up, a kickoff return that they give up, and they end up losing going away 41-30. And you're thinking at that time, well, you know what? Maybe they'll see Virginia Tech again in the ACC championship game. Because, you're right, Florida State wasn't that good that year. Clemson, they weren't what we think of yet. There was no Chad Morris. There was no secret sauce yet. There was no Brent Venables yet. Dabo hadn't figured it out yet. So, again, the window's open. The door's open. All you got to do is walk through it.
But they turned it around. But let's not make any mistake. NC State wasn't out of it with these particular losses, and they bounced back. And I think the height of that bounce back of, hey, maybe this is our year, was going to North Carolina and the 2-yard Hail Mary. I mean, if you want to talk about a signature moment for Russell Wilson, the football player at NC State, it is the 2-yard Hail Mary late in the third quarter, which to this day is one of those iconic ACC moments that you'll see replayed nonstop.
Yeah, Russell Wilson was just spectacular in his career against North Carolina, 3-0.
So do you definitely want to come back next year and go for 4 in a row now yourself against these guys?
I'm just focusing on beating Maryland right now, but
Can't get you to commit for next year, huh?
I'm just focused on right now. I can't look too far ahead. Matthew 6:33 and 34, and then it talks about just staying in the moment and seek first the kingdom of God. And so I'm just one day at a time type of guy.
The game in 2009 was truly a masterpiece. This game, the 2-yard Hail Mary game, he made plays out of nothing. And it was a 2-yard Hail Mary because he was on a dead sprint from the 2-yard line back to the 25-yard line, where he ends up throwing the ball into the corner of the end zone. And to this day, you can ask any UNC player, what the heck was Danaris Searcy doing? Because he's in the back of the end zone, and if he doesn't bat it back in, they can't score the touchdown.
But momentum swings late in the third. 4th and 2. Russell Wilson scrambles and lobs it toward the end zone. Owen Spencer makes the catch, 19-17.
Destined to fall into my hands, kind of. I was like, oh my God, it's coming to me. It's about to be a big time catch.
So that's 4 straight for NC State over North Carolina. The only thing left, 1 win at Maryland, and the Wolfpack will go to the ACC championship game. Jeff Gravely, WRL Sports, Chapel Hill.
That was how it worked out in that series. And Tom O'Brien always used to say it's because Carolina cheated. And that was it. That was karma. That was their karma, was that Tom did it the right way, and he beat their teams even though Carolina had superior talent.
You mentioned karma, and I guess this is where we have to talk about NC State stuff again. Because all NC State had to do was beat Maryland at Maryland to get to the ACC championship game. First time they would have shown up for a title, to win a division title, whatever, since 1979, the year I was born, Giglio. That's how old the streak of non-titles is, or even a division win. So all they had to do was beat the Terps. But Phillip Rivers could never beat the Terps. And I guess Russell Wilson couldn't do it here either.
It was the same challenge, Joe, and same script as the Virginia Tech game. NC State jumps out to a 14-0 lead against a Maryland team that could not win the division, Joe. All they could do was be the spoiler, Joe. And guess what they did? We should have had Torrey Smith on this podcast. 14 catches, 224 yards, one of the all-time great performances in this decade, in that decade for ACC football, was by Torrey Smith and Danny O'Brien, who ends up being just this thorn in NC State's side. But that game is notable not only for the reason that they didn't win the division, Joe, but because that game, that loss, and the loss to East Carolina in particular, Tom O'Brien felt like Russell Wilson didn't play at his best. And for whatever reason, Tom O'Brien was convinced if Russell Wilson had spent the spring at NC State, the summer at NC State, going through practice, going through the off-season workouts, he would have performed better in those bigger moments. He truly held those two games specifically, the ECU loss and the Maryland loss, against Russell Wilson. I think that's finally what put it over the top. Tom viewed this season as not quite the year they were supposed to be there, but knew the talent that they had. And remember, Mike Glennon's class was the top 30, top 25 ranked class. And now you're talking about these players being in their third and fourth year. That's when he had convinced himself that he could have the big payday with the 2 years of Mike Glennon compared to 1 with Russell Wilson.
So do you think that's why the senior day happened? Because remember,
I'm still confused by the senior day. I am not going to lie to you.
Wake Forest, senior day, November 13th. He walks. Shout out to our friend Jonathan Jones, who's now at CBS as a big NFL insider. He was at the Daily Tar Heel at North Carolina. He wrote about it, making fun of the fact that Russell Wilson was getting a senior day, but maybe that was all part of the plan by Tom O'Brien?
Even 10 years later, I didn't know what to make of it. So I asked Mike Glennon, was that notable at the time for even the guys on the team? November 13th, Wake Forest at home. That would be the day. It would have been senior day. And
they made him walk. Right?
Russ had already graduated. You say made him. What does that mean?
I think he was – so, I mean, to NC State's credit, coach's credit, that's when Russell still wasn't committed to coming back for another year of football.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I might go play baseball again this spring and, start my Major League Baseball career. And
that would have been his fourth year. He had already graduated.
Right. And then I remember, because that night at the hotel, he was like, yeah, they're making me do senior day tomorrow. And I was kind of like, huh, well, that's good for me. Like, because that means, you won't be here. But I could tell he was on, and I think that is when the wheels started turning in his head. Wait a minute, maybe I'm a better quarterback than I am a baseball player. And I think he was like, I kind of want to come back. Like, I don't know what the conversations were before the season, but I was under the impression like, yeah, like I'm going to play this football season because it's fun. I enjoy it, and baseball season's over. But after that, I'm kind of going to go be a baseball player for my career. And then it was like, I didn't have a ton of success. I had pretty good success, or I didn't have a ton of success in the baseball. I just did pretty well in football. Maybe I'm, had this thing wrong. Maybe I am a better quarterback than I am a baseball player.
After a bowl win, Wolfpack players were quick to talk big about the future. 9 victories, they want more.
This group going out on 9 wins, the standard for next year is going to be different.
They better not think no less than 10 wins next season, so they already set the bar high for them.
At least 10 wins from here on out, more bowl game victories. Those mediocre 5 and 7 seasons aren't going to be accepted around here anymore.
To back up that talk, the Pack's most pivotal offseason move lies in the mind of Russell Wilson. Will he stay or will he go and pursue a career in baseball?
Whether I do come back or not has been a great opportunity. It's been a great blessing, and I'm very passionate about NC State.
We'll decide sometime here in the next week or so. We'll get together and figure it out, but it's going to be what's best for Russell.
I want to be a starting quarterback in the NFL one day, and I want to be a starting second baseman in the Major League Baseball one day. So, no matter what, I work my butt off every day to try to be the best.
So what are the conversations that you have with Tom after the season ends? Beat West Virginia in the bowl game, which was late December.
West Virginia in the bowl game, and I remember that's when the whole crowd was chanting, like, I think Russell got MVP. They were chanting, like, one more year. And that's when I could kind of tell, I'm like, he wants to come back. Like, he's not going to do this baseball thing. Like, he was just feeling it. He was confident about his football. And just, I think all in all, was like, I think I might be able to be a NFL quarterback instead of baseball.
Busy is a normal state for Russell Wilson. Think about it. He balanced 2 sports and graduated in 3 years. But in 2010, even by Wilson's standards, that was a blur. He played in 47 baseball games with the Wolfpack, then was drafted by the Colorado Rockies in June. He got a $200,000 signing bonus from the Rockies, not bad for a 4th-round pick, and then went to Pasco, Washington, clear across the country, to play A-ball with the Tri-City Dust Devils. In 32 games, Wilson hit .230. Had 2 home runs and 4 triples, but not great. Also, probably not totally unexpected, again, given his lack of reps in baseball. He came back to Raleigh in the summer and then played his redshirt junior season in football. The Champs Sports Bowl in Orlando was December 28th, 2010. Wilson threw for 275 yards and 2 scores. NC State beat West Virginia 23-7 and finished the season with a 9-4 record and ranked number 25 in the final AP poll. He didn't know it at the time, and it wasn't his choice, but it would be the last time Russell Wilson would play for the Wolfpack.